today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about the relationship between money and control. When control replaces collaboration, we have one partner who feels voiceless, and we have another partner who might even be resentful over the circumstances and maybe feel superior. Get that real financial security lies in trust. It lies in transparency. It lies in shared responsibility, equal knowledge, shared vision. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we're talking about when money masks control. And we all know what this one feels like if we've been in a relationship and one person is carrying the bulk of the financial burden. It's going to feel like there's a power imbalance. Yeah, it might feel nice to be taken care of. It might feel nice to take care of someone else. But implied in take care of, be taken care of, is an imbalance of some kind. And yeah, in real life, that imbalance is made up in other ways. The person being taken care of definitely does other things that add to the mix. This episode is going to be all about that dynamic and why it feels like such a power imbalance. She out-earns me, and sometimes I feel like my opinion doesn't count. Am I imagining that? Asks George. Well, George, you may be imagining it, but the chances are you're not. There's a subtle control when one person is the prime wage earner, is earning more than the other person. When one person is contributing more, the reason for this is that, let's get real, in our minds, money equals survival. I was working with a client just this week who's actually in the divorce process, and their concern was that they're not going to be taken care of and that they won't be able to take care of themselves. When we talked about it, how much that person is going to get through the divorce minimum, it was evident that they could take care of themselves, but there was still a feeling of insecurity. And that's because, for whatever reason, being generative when it comes to money, or having whatever feels like is enough, feels like survival. Now, I'm going to spare you stories about how you can eat better out of a garbage can in America than you can in third world countries and all that other stuff, because feelings, they may not be facts, but they're what we have. And it's those feelings that lead to this sense of subtle control. It's those feelings that lead to the imbalance in power, where one partner who's earning more often gets to have the final decision on things. It's not that they're doing it consciously. It's not that they're bad people. It's not that they set it up this way to control you, though I'm sure there are instances where that happens. I'm thinking that for average marriages, that's not true. But overtly, they feel like I'm working my butt off. I'm carrying the strain, the burden of the survival of this family, making sure that there's enough money for a roof, making sure that there's enough money for food, making sure there's enough money for clothing, making sure there's enough money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm carrying this burden, the stress of this. And so I'm going to exert a certain amount of overt, or maybe even covert, control. It might look like not being completely transparent about how much money is being earned or how it's being spent. It might be about withholding access to funds, which this client I was just referencing certainly experienced. They don't even really know how much money they've supported their partner in putting away for their future, thus the fear. It might be nitpicking about purchases. Actually, this jacket is a perfect example. I'm wearing it today specifically because it relates to this episode. I am not the prime wage earner, but I am an earner and I am a contributor. And I went to go take care of something and saved some money and bought this jacket. Came home and told the prime wage earner, "Hey, I saved some money, so I bought myself a jacket. I always wanted it." And what was said to me was, "How did you pay for it?" And I said, "I paid for it out of my own earnings," right? But that is an example of that dynamic. Now, my partner loves me. We have rational understanding that I contribute as much as they do to the relationship, though it may not always be financial. It might be in other ways, and I'm going to spare you that list. And still, that feeling of, wait, what? You spent my money on a jacket came up for my partners. And I don't fault them for it, by the way. I felt like that myself. There were times in my life when I was the prime wage earner and felt just the same way. Wait, you're spending money on what? You spent all that money on that just because it gives you pleasure and you enjoy it? Look at the stress it's putting on me. And the fact is that when you're the prime wage earner, you feel like you're carrying the burden. And so there's a tendency to covertly or overtly want to control the flow of money, what it's spent on, and maybe even to leverage that imbalance in your relationship in some ways. 76% of marriages report conflict over money, says Ramsey Solutions in 2021. And what that tells you right away is that the power dynamic of money is a major driver in discord in marriages. The translation here of that stat is financial power games aren't rare, they're common. They're one of the most common battlefields of marriage. And we're going to talk more about that as we go through this episode. I handle the big financial stuff. Doesn't that make me responsible, not controlling, says Joe? Well, historically, men have controlled that narrative for quite some time. But in the last 100 years, we've seen a major turnaround in that. And what's interesting is that that could have been written by a man or a woman. Today, 29% of households have women as the prime wage earner. And many of the women clients I work with feel exactly like that. They're handling the big financial stuff. Doesn't that make them responsible? And what is this controlling thing? And the truth is, controlling is a judgment that we make about how we feel someone is communicating with us. We really have no grounds for deciding whether they're actually being controlling. Well, that may not be true. Well, that might be a whole nother episode. So historically, men have been providers. Women have turned that around. But the truth is that men still dominate 70% of long-term financial decisions regardless. That's a 2023 study from the Pew Foundation. And we really want to know, why is that? And why is it because men inherently want to control the finances and therefore the relationship? Is it because they're naturally drawn to power? Is it just historical and we haven't socially been able to exercise that demon? There are brain and socialization differences here. There's long-term versus short-term money focus. And these brain and socialization differences can fuel the imbalance. What does that mean? It means that brains, we've talked about this a lot here on Rich Relationships, so forgive me if I'm going here again, but brains that evolve in a genetically female body tend to be more ecologically minded, and not that they can't be goal-oriented, they just tend to be more ecologically minded. And brains that evolved in a genetically male body tend to be more goal-oriented and long-term. And so it might be that men latch on to long-term money planning because they naturally have an inclination for that. But let's be real. It's also about financial literacy. And we've talked a lot about financial literacy in this show. Whether you are ecologically inclined or a long-term goal-oriented person, if you don't have the financial literacy, there's not much that you're going to be able to do with the money. And socially, historically, in the working class, men used to bring their money home and give it to the wife to manage. And having that ecological mind, the wife would take the $100 and put away $30 for rent for that month, and $10 for food, and $10 for the kids' college fund, and $10 for clothing, and $10 for coal or whatever they heated the house with, et cetera, et cetera. They had a sock system, and this was the way money was handled by the working class historically. And actually, the long-term vision was managed by the women in those households, so that would kind of debunk the historical idea that men have traditionally handled the money. And it may be a class issue. It may be that in households that have more than survival level money beyond working class, maybe there was so much money that the men did handle it. It might be that we're actually talking about different mindsets. It might be that we're talking about a blue collar mindset versus a white collar mindset versus an entrepreneurial mindset. There's all different ways to cut this up. What I'm telling you is women are perfectly well equipped to manage money long term and short term, and men are perfectly well equipped to do that. There is no one kind of brain that is hardwired for it, but it might be that certain kinds of brains are hardwired for certain kind of tasks, and that's one of the things we want to find out in our marriage. She pays most of the bills, but now I feel like a kid asking for permission. How did this happen? It's like the jacket story. Didn't ask for permission, but the implication was maybe I should have. When control replaces collaboration, we have one partner who feels voiceless, and we have another partner who might even be resentful over the circumstances and maybe feel superior, at least in regard to money. What we need to ask ourselves when we're in these circumstances is, what is the network of support or the support system that is allowing that prime wage earner, the prime provider, whatever you want to call it, to have the success that allows them to be in that position? It is normal, natural, and not unusual that the lower earning partner, or even non-earning partner, which happens, is managing the household, managing the family, managing relationships, managing the relationships that support that prime wage earner in their success, that support that prime wage earner in that accomplishment. And there's not a court in America that disagrees with that premise. Part of the problem is that we look so much at either survival or competing that we forget the real joy, the real purpose of earning, whether you're the prime wage earner or no wage earner or partial wage earner. The real purpose is to nurture and support the development of the individuals in the relationship, the two partners and the children. Or if you're divorced, the two partners in parenting and the children. The purpose of those earnings is that we develop as individuals, we feed the partnership to support us in doing that so we can develop and care for the children. And when we focus only on the money, we can lose sight of all the other things that have value. If he earns less, how do I lead financially without making him feel small? And this is a great question, Doris, as we change culturally, as women are recognized as the equals they've always been, and as women take the lead in finances, which maybe they didn't always do, but now they do more often, men who were raised to be providers, or maybe even have a natural instinct to provide, may feel less than in the face of that. That can happen when the man is the prime wage earner, by the way. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we now live in a society where we're all equal. We all have equal opportunity in theory. In reality, not so much. But it is possible for either person to feel small when they're not earning as much or not earning at all, because so much of what's valued in the wider culture is grounded in money. How big your house is, your car, etc. So here's how you look for the red flags, whether you're a man or a woman or any other gender. The red flags are: one partner is vague or doesn't know about the family finances. They don't know whether they're spending more than they're earning or earning more than they're spending. They don't know what the money's being used for. They don't know what the mortgage costs. They don't know what the taxes are. They don't know how much money is being put away for college. They don't know how much money is being put away for the future. Or they have limited awareness. That's a red flag. So that happens on a scale. 10 would be know everything. 0 would be know nothing. And if you're anywhere below 10, you've got some trouble going on. We all, in any partnership, both partners need to be fully financially aware, not necessarily managing it, but aware. In a business partnership, Both partners would be reviewing finances on a regular basis. A marriage is a business partnership in many ways. When there's a discussion of allowance or whose money did you use, that's a red flag. Got a little red flag in my relationship. Working on that. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship. Purchases turned into guilt weapons. I shared an example already. People have one-sided veto power. A person comes up with something they want to buy, the other person vetoes it, even if it's something that's needed and there's money for it, for no reason whatsoever. Again, all these things can happen on a scale. So you want to look at these things. Are you aware? Are you guys talking about allowances? Is there guilt around purchases? Well, sometimes guilt's appropriate. Sometimes we're spending secretly or more than we should. That is another episode. And do you have equal veto power? Look for those red flags. If she earns more, how do I still have a voice in the financial decisions? That is a great question, Harry. Kathy asks, how do we share financial leadership without constant fights? What we've talked about in previous episodes is that you want to have what we're now calling clear leadership lanes. Leadership lanes are based on where are your strengths and how much time availability do you have. If you're both super busy, then maybe you need to look at that. But the chances are that the person who is the prime wage earner is going to be investing more time in earning money and may have less availability for some of the other things. Not zero availability. If that's all they're doing and you're slapping a pipe in her mouth and putting slippers on her feet and feeding her bonbons and cooking for her, cleaning up after her while you have your own personal aspirations that you're pursuing, then something's wrong. But it is fully possible that if when she's the prime wage earner, she's maybe not working from home. Maybe you're going to be cooking more for her. That doesn't mean she never cooks, et cetera, et cetera. There are going to be clear lanes of leadership. There might even within the financial sphere be clear lanes of leadership. Maybe one of you is going to make sure that all the bills get paid, and the other one is going to make sure that investment in the future is taken care of. And there are a lot of ways to cut that. Maybe you're going to share the bill paying. Maybe one of you is going to manage one house and the other is going to manage another, depending on your situation. Whatever it is, there are clear lanes. And there's mutual understanding, obviously, of the finances. There's also mutual veto and always alternatives when there's disagreement. There's going to be, instead of an allowance, each of you might have an individual spending plan. I highly advise that couples with dual incomes or even single incomes operate in the following way. Each individual should have their own account. There should also be a joint account. If there's one wage earner, there should be an understanding of how much of that money is going to go to both people individually to spend on their own personal mad money. How much of that money, or if there's both earners, both people are earning, how much of that money goes to mad money? How much of that money, let's say, is going to go to joint expenses? It might be a percentage. If the prime wage earner is earning 50% more than the other person, then it might be a percentage of each income is going to go into joint expenses. You got to figure out what's fair, but there needs to be an understanding and agreement about how to use that money. And instead of an allowance, you both have the freedom to use a certain amount of money for yourselves. And it might be a little unfair if one person has enough money to buy a Ferrari, while the other one only has enough money to buy an electric scooter. Just saying. Clear lanes, equal power. Couples who regularly talk about money are more likely to describe their marriage as happy, says Ramsey Solutions in 2021. Another listener asks, if I give up control, won't our finances get messy? And that is really possible. But if you are having, as business partners, regular discussions of the finances, and you give up full control and then give your partner the ability to manage the money also, when you're having those business meetings, you're going to review. How are we doing with the bill paying? Oh my God, that went up. Let's talk about that. Da, 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 da. You will let up control, but it'll be collaborative. Instead of controlling, you'll be making joint decisions. Right? Yes, you will be giving up control is the answer. You don't want control. Control is a freaking illusion anyway. we can barely control our own thoughts. So how the hell are we going to control money or control the other person or control situations? It is very difficult. Get that real financial security lies in trust. It lies in transparency. It lies in shared responsibility, equal knowledge, shared vision. Get that the richest couples aren't simply secure financially, whatever that means, right? Secure financially means different things to different people. They're investing emotionally in one another. And the process of having partnership meetings about money is a way to invest emotionally. And I know, hey, if it sounds scary or dangerous, feel free to reach out to me. Go to richinrelationship.com, join our free membership group, The Bridge, and you can reach me directly through that free membership group. And you will not be endlessly sold to that. The purpose of that group is to just give you more and more information about relationships. That's all it's for. That's about all we have today. Next episode is Breadwinner Burnout, the hidden exhaustion of holding it all together. And that the whole idea of that episode is sometimes when you're the prime wage earner, it can really be exhausting, and ways that can be relieved besides shared leadership. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day and a wonderful tomorrow.